Welcome. My name is Natasha Sherman, and I am your host. And my guest today is Dror Ashuah. He is an author with a very significant and unusual message, which comes through in a series of books that he wrote. And I'm just going to let him start talking about those messages. Welcome, Dror.
Thank you, Natasha. Always a pleasure to be here.
Yes, thank you. This is a third time I think we've done this.
Yes. Yeah,
and I'm so happy to have you back because the last book has come out. But I'd like you to start with, for those people who don't know, how did this start in your life?
There was a definite moment that the conversation with angels started. And that was on December 7th and December 10th, 2007. I had a meditation at home. I walked to a cafe in New York City on Broadway and Reed Street. It's still there, a Starbucks. And the meditation was a bit different. I felt that there was this luminosity and feeling of wholeness, and it was some type of a very, very powerful experience, which I didn't know how to translate at the moment. I went to a cafe, I took my tea, and at the cafe there was something very strange. There was a person dressed in white that kind of followed me to the table. He had actually companions, and he sat right across from me. I walked to the end of the table. It was kind of December, it was Christmas, so I thought they wanted some money. I sat down, he sat in front of me, and he asked me if he could talk to me. And I looked at him and I couldn't really resist. And he said, we are angels like you, and we would like to tell you your story. And naturally I wanted to resist it, and I wanted to say, I don't have money, I don't know what, but I couldn't. And he asked me to take notes. I took my notebook and pen, and he started to talk very slowly in a baritone voice. It was a very, very interesting. But I kind of, the room quieted it. It felt like it was just me and him at that point. And I took the message down. And from that point on, it was, I don't even remember how he got up and left. I read the message and I was just like, what just happened? And the following days I heard his voice, and I basically in the same kind of dictation rhythm, and I started taking notes every day. And wow. I thought I'm losing it for a while. I started sharing with friends, with best friends, and people say, wow, the messages are interesting, share more with us. And within a year and a half, I got the message to turn it into a book, and it turns into 3 books. And now the 4th and final one is coming out in about a month.
Wow. And so the first book was Conversation with Angels, and So Be It. Second book
was And So Be It.
And So Be It, Conversation with Angels, Volume 2. Third one is It's Time.
And the 4th one is Are You Ready?
Wow.
Yeah, and it's been a journey. It's been a personal journey and a wild journey that I have to say I didn't ask for in some way.
Yes.
And it was very humbling and not an easy one, but I'm grateful every day.
So at some point we're going to get to some of the main messages from these books, but really it's almost like being told, being given gifts of wisdom and insight and access is how it occurs to me. And I think one of the places at the book, it said you don't have to read this from cover to cover. If you just open a page, and that's my experience. Anytime I open a page and I read, it's like something starts to go, yeah. So did you want to read something from the 4th book?
I would love to share the meaning of the title, Are You Ready? Because it's a very particular question. Are you
Yes.
ready for what?
Yes.
What are you talking about? So, if I may, I would love to share it. And the messages are meant to be read not linearly, but just to open into wherever you guided, whatever page, and it's accurate. It somehow works they call it the circle. There's some kind of a method to and precision to the page that you open, and that's what you're supposed to read. And I think reading it from cover to cover is too much. Is overload. Just one message at a time is enough.
Yes. So, what about Are You Ready?
Are you ready? So, I would like to read, if possible, what I received as a message of what it means. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
The angel asks, "Are you ready?" The one question that you are asked is, "Are you ready?" A bigger story is now unfolding, and it is your choice whether to be part of that story or watch it unfold from the sidelines. The greatest gift you have is being alive in a body at this time of immense changes and the opportunity to follow your path of truth and light. Human consciousness is ascending as a whole, along with Earth's vibration to its next evolutionary step. You, the one following your heart, are being asked to be one of those columns that support the bridge now being built to a new level of consciousness. Every transition aspires to be organic in form and pace, to allow the ones who are destined to pave this road, to build these bridges, creating a new roadmap for others to follow. This is what you are called to do and be. You are asked if you are ready to be part of that bridge and embody the pathway for others to follow. You are asked if you are ready to live from your heart, breathe from your heart, communicate from your heart, act from your heart, think from your heart, and feel from your heart. You are asked to be pulsating, throbbing heart of light, opening and charting a new vibration for others to live by example. You are asked to be in that frequency all the time, even when you are asleep.
Wow. Yeah. You know, so they talk about change, and so the journey of humanity is and now is a significant time to elevate into a new level of consciousness. And for those who are already somewhat awake and operating at a higher level, and presumably you're being asked to be one of those vehicles, is to become a bridge that can help people transition in a positive way. Is that?
Yes, and when they're talking about transition is organic, everything new that grows is preceded by death of some sorts. You know, in a natural form. Also, when there's a birth and there's a death followed by rebirth, plants. Earth now is going through some type of a transition that is involving death of a lot of species, of organic forms, and destructions. And that is actually part of the organic pathway to move into a new reality, if that's, you know, if enough people, which is that's a question, will rise up to the occasion. And there's something that's called the 100 monkey experiment, which I'm
No, please go ahead.
100 monkeys means that I won't tell the story, but means that when there is enough people that rise in their consciousness to a level high enough, it will shift the consciousness of the whole planet.
Got it. Yeah. So I want to talk about some of the specifics, but before we do that, so here you are a regular human being living your regular life. You're a meditator. You're someone who, has a spiritual inquiry, inner growth, curiosity, all of that. And suddenly these, quote, angels show up and start downloading information. So that is, in my world, life-altering, but life-shattering. You no longer can perceive the world in the same way. It just is impossible. So you write these messages, and on some level you're living the messages, but what's the impact on the Dror who was before this?
Thank you for the opportunity to share that. I felt from the beginning skeptical. I'm not religious. I didn't grow up with some kind of a dogma. I don't have angels in my upbringing. I'm Jewish. I grew up in a kibbutz. Angels were not part of the vocabulary. So my initial reaction was like, why me? I'm like the least that need to be doing this kind of work. And I was reluctant. I still am.
Wow.
And and each time, right from the beginning, where my questioning part was really struggling, was what am I doing? There's this amazing new world that is opening in sense of vision, sense of understanding, in sense of the messages, in sense of my ability to perceive or see things that I haven't seen before. On one aspect, and then on my personal life, there's an implosion, a destruction, pain. My relationship with my ex-wife for then 14 years has been suffering. My relationship with my daughter, and I really didn't have the tools to contain all of it and keep it. I didn't know how to manage, and I'm sure I made a mistake, and I'm sure I hurt my daughter in some way, in sense of not being fully and just a normal dad, because there was this incredible world that was opening to me, and at the same time there was a beautiful child that I was so attached to that says, Dad, I need you to be here present. So as one world was opening, another world was shuttering completely. And my life has changed, and it's I understand it now. Sometimes that is the cost of growing. Sometimes relationship will not be able to hold. Sometimes in families where one grows, the other family resisted, because if he grows or she grows, the rest needs to begin to acknowledge it. So there's always some type of a movement and resistance. And the angels talk about it a lot. In the messages, there's a lot of discussion about that resistance. If you don't feel resistance, it means that there's no movement. That's how. And in my life, there was a price to pay, definitely. And now I'm in peace with it. But at the time, and even there was a lot of pain involved in juggling those two worlds.
And as you describe it, when they asked you to dictate, they asked you to take notes, your experience was almost like this inability to resist. It was so compelling. And so now you're dealing with that force, and you're getting messages that are profound. You're getting new insights, and you're expanding, and it's hard to language that to the old you and the people in your relationships. So I could see where there's a price to pay.
There was a push against it, because when you change and you begin and you're opening up to these, I literally felt sometimes after or while during receiving these messages, I felt that my cells are moving to some kind of like, if I can say it, on like an orgasmic type of vibration. There was this movement, even shaking of the body, and there was it was challenging to contain it and also share it. I didn't have the word or the reference to share it with my daughter and with my ex at the time, but we all felt that there's a change happening, and
I suspect they felt like they lost you.
Yes, and I tried to resist it. I tried, but I felt I would die. I don't know if it's a physical death, but I felt like this was my purpose. I felt so compelled, because it's and each time I resisted it, and I said, "This is it, and I'm not going to." And then it comes, and I'm just like, I would take it. It was definitely a struggle. It wasn't like I wasn't gang-ho about, well, another message is that's great. I was just fighting it. Still do sometimes. Yeah. But it doesn't help.
And I again, when you use the word, it's like this is kind of your purpose. I mean, it's hard to resist that, consistently, if it's aligned with something that is almost cellular.
But many of us do.
Resist,
you know that this is what you're supposed to do, but you adhere to not shake up the boat. You adhere to make money that is safe. I would say most of us.
At least in some area of our lives, yes.
In some, we choose not to do what we know we meant to do. If you're meant to be an artist or a writer or a dancer, but you have this 9-to-5 job that pay your bill and pay your rent, often you'll choose that one. Or your family wants you to be a doctor, but you know that you're meant to be a painter. Yeah. You probably will be a doctor until you retire, and then you'll take painting in the JCC or
until you're miserable enough.
Until you're miserable enough. So sometimes it takes immense pain to actually break that container of safety of how we grew up into that idea of what we need to be, and to be ourselves, to be our truth, to play our part. This is the hardest. It's very interesting, the dichotomy of that the hardest part of us to live is our truth and who we really are. We have all these distractions. We grow up, like we talked about today, as a pure child that just want to play and just be themselves, and then somehow along the way you get diverted, and we need to really fight to go back to our core, our truth, our what we meant to do and be. That's our gift.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I think a lot of us have almost even let go of the question, like, who am I really, or what is my purpose?
It's painful sometimes.
It's painful, and it almost seems like it's so out of reach. It's so out of the realm of what makes sense. What makes sense is the 9-to-5 or whatever it is. And I'm not knocking 9-to-5. We all have responsibilities, and
Not only that, but sometimes one would choose to be so busy so that question will never come up.
Yes.
It's a strategy, because once you stop, you know that if you're on the wrong path, you know that path does not serve you. You know that this relationship does not serve you, but you'll keep yourself so busy and you'll keep yourself so occupied. Or often people resort to some type of medication or drugs or even TV or eating to distract from what you know is your core truth. And
years ago I heard someone speaking, and this one line, I never forgot it. He said, you come into the world on a wave of intent, and it's up to you to resonate with that.
Yeah.
And I don't think we're even taught to look at that way, that there is a wave of intent, or we just more and more get so involved in the worldly things that seems like something remote or later in life. But I want to talk about some of the very specific messages, but I want to also ask you, you had a very profound experience with the passing of your father that kind of is part of this journey. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I grew up in a kibbutz, and the relationship with the father was not an intimate one because he was in the army, high-ranking officer in the Israeli army, and and we grew up in a separate homes than my parents. And then last year, I felt, and this is part of this journey, I felt that it's time to go and escort him, and I bought a flight to Israel and arrived, and the following day he went into the ER in Israel.
Now, until then he hadn't been ill?
No,
or?
he wasn't ill, but I had a feeling that I had this feeling. So literally a few hours after I landed, he went into the ER, and then they discovered cancer, and from that point on until his last breath, I was with him. And I had this amazing opportunity. We talk about the pain of passing, but for me personally, to be able to hold his hand, unimaginable, to stroke his hair, to say I love you, to feed him with a spoon, he allowed me to dress him up. He is like the strong, amazing, like officer, person of authority that I always knew. And he was clear all the way till the end. And I had a profound time with him. It was February 14th, Valentine's Day, the first time that I heard him on video. He was in the hospital, he was going home, he wanted to die at home. So my older brother taped him saying, I love you, to my mother. I've never heard him say that before.
Wow.
I love you. Usually they in the kibbutz they say we love you. We. It's always we. There's never I. And that night, on the way home to die, he asked, where am I going when I die? And my younger brother was with him, and he didn't have the answer. But that night I was restless, and when he was lying there, I asked him, do you want to know where you're going? Do you want to know what's happening? And he said yes. So I called my mother and my brother, and they wanted to hear it. And for about an hour, I shared with him every step of the dying process. And I said, this is a beautiful process. There's nothing to fear. Stay with your eyes open. Stay awake. See the beautiful, you're moving in and out of consciousness. I know this process through my own journeys. And after this talk, his whole face lit up, and he calmed down. Even my mother and brother saw it, and he went into he went into kind of a coma, and he never came back to speak again. He let go after that talk. And 12 days later, I was in the room, and I felt something was going on, and I called my sister and my mother, and I put my hand on his forehead, and all of a sudden he opened his eyes, and I knew that was his last breath. And I said, Abba, I love you. Abba is father in Hebrew. Ani ohev otcha. And lech b'shalom, go in peace. And he took his last breath. And at that moment, there was something amazing happening. It's like I felt like I saw it. It was just, my mother was like, he's not breathing. I'm like, feel him. He's all over the room. The room was filled, and the body was nothing. It was just like a piece of cloth. I looked at him, he was not there. And at that moment, it's not cerebral, it's not cognitive. It's just, I knew that there's no such thing as death. It's just an illusion. He was completely present in the room. The whole room was full of him. And the body, I didn't even care about the body anymore. It just did not contain him. And it changed me. Like, I knew from the messages, and I knew from reading that people talk about death. This for me was the proof. I had no doubt that it doesn't exist, because he was totally present everywhere, just not in the body. He just came out. and I could feel it.
And we only have about a minute and a half, but we're going to continue this conversation. But what was so you felt him. He had left his body and he was everywhere. Do you still feel that? Or
I feel him, yeah. I feel him, and I can communicate with him. He moved into, his learning. But I just want to say how it affected me.
Yes, please.
From that point on, I felt like there's no time to wait for anything that you want to do in life, because time is so precious and it moves so fast. And although I somewhat lived like that, it wasn't as accurate as I wanted. And now I don't care about the part of the dying, or I care about now living my truth, living as accurately as I can possibly live. And his death is that gift that I got, because you move on to new learning. He's now in a different school, but it's so precious to be here. It's so precious to be in a body, to occupy this opportunity to grow. We're here in a school.
I love that. I love that. And what a gift.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah.
as you said, you were already kind of in that knowledge to a certain degree. But as you saw him leave, and knowing that where he's going is not dangerous, it's
beautiful.
It's safe and beautiful.
Beautiful.
But bringing you back to, but this right now is where I'm at.
This is the time.
This is the opportunity.
This is the time, and what I got is you can't wait. There's no waiting. Because we always say, we live on a 30-year mortgage. We live when we pay the credit card at some point. We live when we'll go to exotic places someday. And what I got from this is whatever I need to do, I do. No matter what. Let the universe figure out the mechanics of it.
I love that. And that's so perfect. And this is just the first half hour, because I want to get into some of the messages I think it's important for people to hear. So thank you for this first half hour, and I'm looking forward to the next half hour.
Thank you.
My name is Natasha Sherman. Thank you for joining us.